Welcome to another video in the crime series from the Wimbledon channel. Today we're going to look at the elements of crime. The two fundamental elements that need to be proved for something to be a crime are mens rea and actus reus. These are both Latin terms meaning guilty mind and guilty act. Let's look at mens rea to start. This is the hardest element to prove because it has to do with the mind, and we can't always tell what people are thinking or what they know. Fundamentally, mens rea looks at the motive and intent of the person who's accused of committing the crime. In order to prove mens rea, you need to show A, that they meant to do it, and B, that a reasonable person would have been aware of the consequences of their actions. You might be sitting there at this point thinking to yourself, well, how are they going to prove that I meant to go over the speed limit in my car? Well, that's an example of what's called a strict liability offence. These are offences where you don't need to prove mens rea. That's because they're usually summary or less serious offences, and there's a greater volume of these. The logic goes, if you have your driver's licence, you should always have control of the car, and it's assumed knowledge that you are to obey the speed limit. So we don't care if you meant to or not. You shouldn't have been speeding. Essentially, this speeds up the process of those people being charged with those types of offences. Now let's look at actus reus. This element of a crime is usually much easier to prove and comes down to the simple fact, did they actually do it? And usually the answer is much easier to find out due to physical evidence, witness testimony, and forensics. Again, you might be sitting there thinking, well, maybe they can prove that I did an act. That doesn't actually mean that the consequences of that act were caused by my actions. This question is a subset of actus reus, and it's called causation. In other words, was the crime a direct consequence of their actions? Or perhaps was it merely an unfortunate coincidence or caused by something completely unrelated? For example, I might be angry with my uncle at Christmas and hit him with a baseball bat and he has a heart attack and dies. Now there's every chance that that's what caused the heart attack, but perhaps my uncle was incredibly unfit and would have had a heart attack anyway. Or perhaps we have a really strong family history of heart attacks, in which case that needs to be taken into account as to whether I'm charged with just assault or with manslaughter. In other words, did hitting him with the bat cause him to die, or was it an unrelated consequence? In order to prove actus reus, you need a direct link from action to result. So in any court case, the prosecution is trying to prove mens rea and actus reus, because they're the two fundamental elements of a crime. This has been another video for the crime series from Wimbledon channel. If you want to see more of these, click the link to subscribe.